Welcome back. Let's catch you up on a few stories that should be on your radar today. It is time for Rapid Fire. And here to take on the headlines are Dominic Chu, Rahel Solomon, and Robert Frank. Welcome, everybody. First up, and Dom tipped us off to this at the top of the show, the street is extremely bullish on Peloton, the digital fitness company, despite the shares being down 25% since the IPO. More than a dozen firms initiated coverage today with the buy or equivalent rating. You can see them there. Average price target is around $30, which is a 30% rally. Now, Dom, it would be one thing if they said we're bullish because it's done so poorly since the IPO, but most of these calls just seem to reiterate the same things we heard about why the IPO should have been more successful.
Sure. I mean, they talk about the idea that there's a big runway available for companies like this. One of the notes mentioned the idea that they're vertically integrated really well, right? They own the actual hardware, the bikes themselves. They own all the content. The stars have signed away their likeness and their ability to kind of broadcast these online classes. So all of it belongs to Peloton. But a $29 IPO price makes it seem like it was very aggressively priced if the target price that these guys are putting out on average is now $30 and change by the time it's done. So, I mean, this is not a call on whether or not Peloton can grow. They obviously can. The issue is whether or not there's a valuation that actually kind of fairly puts them at a level in the market, given what their runway could be.
This is reminding me a little bit of GoPro, where you start out with a very successful hardware company that said it could transition into a sort of media software content company, and it didn't. Now, Peloton might, because it is stickier, and its programming is terrific. But one of the analysts said that they would go from it's about 500,000 subscribers now to 3.5 million. Wow. Which is a huge leap, and that implies a lot of bikes.
Yeah. But they also don't have a ton of competition, so they could do it. I mean, I would like to have a Peloton if I had the room for it in my New York City apartment. I don't.
So we do. Jim Cramer, they use his at his house for like drying clothes.
Clothing rack.
My house, we don't even do that. And it's so heavy. The great thing about Peloton is it's so heavy you can't move it. You can't move it out of your house or also. It's 150 pounds.
So you know what else I would say about it is, and this is, again, this is not some kind of a hit job on Peloton with whatever it is. What they do have going for them is that they are trying to diversify the product offering behind just the bikes. Yeah. You've got the treadmills now with those things. You've got the wall mirrors and everything else. So what they're trying to do is innovate on that way. I just don't know how much innovation it takes to get people to really sign on.
And the only other thing you need to know today is the only firm not to initiate with a buy rating was also the only one that wasn't an underwriter. Hat tip to Bespoke for that little nugget.
Are you saying the underwriter?
Am I suggesting?
No, they would never do that.
Moving right along, it is a big week for Mark Zuckerberg. The CEO of Facebook has been on a media offensive defending the platform amid complaints about its policies and its influence on elections. In an exclusive interview with Lester Holt, he explained it's not about making friends right now.
I get that a lot of people are angry at us. Part of growing up for me has just been realizing that it is more important to be understood than it is to be liked.
Props to him for that kind of statement. But what I think he's really getting at is there has been a lot of backlash about his free speech principles that he laid out last week. People want to see Facebook be more proactive when it comes to policing, especially campaign content. And this is Mark Zuckerberg saying basically no.
But I think it's interesting, right? Because he compared or likened Facebook to the Fifth Estate, which is like, okay, but then to say that they don't have any responsibility policing their content, it's like, well, with much power comes great responsibility.
And to exactly your point, it's going to be up to the regulators then. I mean, this might ultimately be out of their hands. If Zuckerberg wants to say, my position is I want to do it X way, that's fine. But regulators at some point might say, well, we think you're like cable TV instead of broadcast, or whatever the right analogy is, and make the decision for them. It's an open question.
I think it's interesting because you have that great interview, which kind of hit a lot of things that are facing Mark Zuckerberg as a founder and CEO in Silicon Valley. At the same time, you're seeing kind of these reports come out about, whether or not it was appropriate for Mark Zuckerberg as the CEO and founder of Facebook to be sitting down with conservative pundits and other folks out there on that side of things, and also about whether or not he's kind of like softly advising some Democratic potential candidates for president about what they should be doing with their hiring. So all of this has kind of put him squarely in the political crosshairs. And that's something where you cannot be liked, because eventually half the people at least are not going to like
he understood at least?
Right. Well, that's my point. I mean, fine, you're not going to be liked. We knew that. But to be understood, I don't know what there is to understand about Facebook that we don't already know. The problem is to convince the rest of the country that you can police yourself and you can do the things that you say you do, which they've proven over and over again. They say they do this, they didn't. They say they would adhere to this, and they didn't.
He's basically trying to say we're almost going to follow the principles of free speech as they are enforced on the government. In other words, the stuff that incites violence, the obvious illegal categories.
Right.
Is that enough, though, or do people just simply want more of him than he's willing to offer?
Well, look, the power of Facebook in the coming election will only make this much more of a focus.
I know. Let's talk some Amazon, though, shall we? We'll leave Facebook alone for a second, because a new CNBC investigation has found that third-party sellers on Amazon's marketplace are frequently shipping customers expired food. Okay, the details might make your stomach turn. There's been curdled coffee creamer, year-old brownies, and Tivana products that were discontinued back in 2017. 40% of sellers in one case that was tested had 5 or more complaints from users about expired food. Apparently, what's going on here, guys, is that since Amazon opens its platform to third-party sellers, you can go buy expired food at the grocery store, for example, and turn around and sell it on the platform.
So when I heard this story, I thought, well, when you buy something from Amazon, isn't it always buyer beware? And then I realized that I buy my protein powder from Amazon, and then I realized that Robert was the one who told me about the protein powder.
Yeah, but
we both
the great thing about
expired.
Right, what's expired?
Know.
And can you just protein powder like Twinkies? It never does expire. But a lot of it was beef jerky, hot sauce, sugar. Like that stuff doesn't really expire. But here's the thing: they talk about all the AI technology that Amazon has to detect these things. All you have to do is get a reader to read the expiration date on the package. How hard could that be?
But they're
to just look at
sellers, right? So how much?
No, but Amazon could just have a reader.
Sure. I mean, you could, but I guess it tells you the shortfalls or what could happen pitfall-wise for not being able to control your entire supply chain.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the whole thing. I would just say this. I have got a growing peeve. It's not a massive one right now about food waste. So I'm not as conscientious. I'm one of those people who believes that expiration dates.
You love expired
you can still
wants to buy
you can still go a little
food.
beyond there, and it's fine. Just don't throw it away or find somebody who actually.
One more slightly serious note, though. So for companies like Abbott, which make baby formula, the companies themselves are concerned because now you've got people selling their products that may be expired, and they could be on the hook maybe for some issue with that. So now they're themselves trying to police the site.
What do they call it? I believe people call it the gray market, right? Isn't that what it is for like these third-party sellers that aren't actually
sanctioned? Or if it's cheese, it gets blue.
Or sometimes green.
Right?
Robert, we may need to check our protein powder.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Never take shopping advice from Robert Rahel. That's
definitely true.
The moral of the story. And finally, a new report from the Wall Street Journal highlights how advertisers are becoming more and more skeptical of online influencers. That's because a lot of them apparently have inflated follower counts. Who knew? And like counts as well. And this, in many cases, can be actual fraud. Influencer deception will reportedly cost advertisers $1.3 billion this year, according to industry estimates. To which I would say, my guess is most people are still getting a lot more value out of using influencers than they are worried about losing that cumulative $1 billion.
That's a fair point.
I would say this. I don't subscribe as much to the influencer side of things, but I will say that targeted ads on social media have been a huge idea generator for me for like holiday gifts.
I discovered I'm a nano, which means I have like less than 5,000.
But I'm a nano too.
But for $100, I could become like Rahel, and she's a micro. She's a micro. She's got 10,000 or more.
Rahel bought all her followers. And
She doesn't need it.
Okay, so here is my growing peeve. Influencers who constantly bombard you with ads. So that's the thing. I think for me, and I am a little susceptible to like influencers online, I think it's quality over quantity, right? So for companies watching, if I believe that the influencer actually uses that product, I might buy it.
Except for protein powder.
Well, protein powder is just off the table now. So that's the thing, though. If I'm constantly being bombarded with sponsored ads, I'm out. I'm completely out.
But the influencer ecosystem has become probably the most important channel through which to launch products and sell things these days. I mean, would anybody argue with that? Even though I realize not the whole population is on social media all the time, but you can tell, and this comes up when things blow up, too. I mean, look at vaping. They went and realized, oh, geez, we paid all of these influencers all this money, and it turns out it was pretty successful, and now maybe we wish it hadn't been so.
And they're realizing that they're expected to spend almost $10 billion over the next year on influencer marketing. So, yes, I think people are wising up to it, but there's still a lot of big spend going to that.
It's kind of like the third-party thing with Amazon. Like, there's problems, but the core thing to me still seems like it's working. Yeah. But how are you? Are you not an influencer right now?
She is.
No, so actually companies have reached out to me, but as
she's on her way to becoming a mid-tier.
We're not allowed to promote products, so
help her get to be mid-tier.
No additional streams of income for me.
I've learned a lot. Thank you all, Dominic Chu, Rahel Solomon, and Robert Frank for Rapid Fire.